misidentification of insects can lead to unnecessary sprays. Now, last year I was called out to a couple of fields in Cherokee County, and they were concerned early in the season about whiteflies. They've been hearing a lot about them in the press. Well, when I went out there, it looked strange, but when you went out to the cotton and you touched the cotton, all these white things would fly up. And I can definitely see why they thought they were whiteflies. What they actually were was an insect called the phantom midge. And in the larva stage, they're glassworms, and they were breeding in Lake Wise, and a lot of them were coming out onto the cotton. They weren't doing any damage, but the problem was that they could easily have been misidentified as whiteflies. Here's one that I got a couple calls on. They thought they were plant bugs, and this was just up in the terminal, and this is the white margin burrower bug. It's a relative to the burrower bug that attacks peanuts, but it's not the same species. Doesn't really do any damage in cotton, but it's important that we identify it properly. And then are some beneficial insects that can sometimes be mistaken for harmful insects. And this is the spine soldier bug. And one thing I like about it, the egg mass is just beautiful. It has a golden egg mass with a little crown around it. So I've always been amazed by this egg mass. I'm not really concerned about scouts or consultants misidentifying the spine soldier bug for brown stink bug, because we really don't do or base our sprays on stink bugs on the number we find out in the field, but rather the damage to the bolls. And then some insects can be both friend and foe. A perfect example is fire ants. They're great beneficial insects, especially in our minimum till or no-till soils, getting escape worms. But at the same time, they can crawl up onto the plant, protect aphids, and they feed on the honeydew. And if you're a scout, you'll notice sometimes when you're walking along the field, sometimes you have a lot of aphids, and these fire ants are up the plants. They actually get on you and cause some problems with biting and stinging. I do want to say that in the past, I've conducted 2 surveys belt-wide with entomologists, and I did one in the late 1990s and did a beneficial insect publication for Progressive Farmer. Then I did one in 2012 where the entomologists actually ranked the importance of the beneficial insects. And so I do want to thank these entomologists. I've got with Cotton Grower Magazine, and they're going to publish the update on the beneficial insects. But there's an important thing when we think about beneficial insects. It's not the individual beneficial insects, although some may be a little bit more important than others. But Dr. Scott Stewart from Tennessee had a great comment. He said the natural enemy system is complex, and it is the accumulative impact that make them so valuable. So it's the overall impact of all these beneficials that make them so valuable. And then also that we need to think of beneficial insects as a novel and a free mode of action. Now, the value of beneficial insects can vary across the cotton belt. When you get out to the far west, they're more concerned about beneficial insects that attack whiteflies. Here, we're more concerned sometimes about beneficial insects of the complex that are worms, aphids, other insects that are more important to us. And also, the type of production system that you have can influence the amount of beneficial insects or the type or species of beneficial insects you have. When you have a system that is minimum till, reduced till, or no till, and you compare that to conventional tillage, well, in the reduced tillage systems, you'll have more fire ants, and they're a very important beneficial insect forests in the southeast. And of course, the species value has changed over time. Some species that were very important before the boll weevil eradication program and BT cotton aren't as valuable today because the insect hosts that were out there aren't out there now. And I'll give you a perfect example, and that is the beet armyworm complex, which Dr. Ron Smith mentioned earlier. Back before we had the boll weevil eradication program, they were doing a good job of controlling beet armyworms. When we started making our our boll weevil eradication sprays, we eliminated the Cotesian wasp. And if you can remember back then, if you're old enough, we had a terrible time with beet armyworms. Well, now with BT cotton, beet armyworms aren't a pest of cotton so much today. They may be here in a field or two, but not the way they were back before or during when we had the boll weevil eradication program. And it's hard to put a value on beneficial insects. I know that they've actually had research out in Arizona, Dr. Peter Ellsworth, where they have put a dollar value on the beneficial insects, and it's $40 to $50 per acre, and this is research based. We don't have a value here in the southeast, but I'm quite sure that it would approach that value here, and that's just free money for the growers sitting in the field. I would point out that when we make our insecticide sprays, we need to consider, especially early and middens in the season, what impact those sprays are going to have on beneficial insects. So if you look in our Alabama Extension IPM Cotton Guide, you'll see the ranking, and it's a good ranking on beneficial insects. So if you'll just pay attention to this, this will help you, maybe go to a less or a safer mode of action on beneficial insects with your insecticides, and save these beneficial insects since they're doing so much good. Now, when we talk about beneficial insects, really need to divide them into two classes, and that's our predators. And usually these are the insects that we can see because they kill and eat their prey. And they fall into two categories. One is the sucking category, where they put their stylet into an insect and suck the juices out of that insect, and then the chewing. So good examples of sucking beneficial insects would be the minute pirate bug and the big-eyed bugs. Chewing would be something like lacewings or lady beetles. And then we also have our parasites. And a lot of these are so small that you really won't recognize them out in the field. And you need either a hand lens or a dissectoscope to see them. And then we have another class that I put in with the parasites, and that's our pathogens. And this would be something like the aphid fungus, which is very important to us for controlling aphids. So let's look at a few of these beneficial insects. This is a picture of the big-eyed bug. The big-eyed bug and the minute pirate bug were consistently ranked pretty close as the top two beneficials by the entomologists across the southeast. So they're extremely important beneficial insects to us. Now, when you're out there, you may see these eggs. I know Ron showed the big-eyed bug eggs. These are lady beetle eggs. And then they hatch out into a very colorful immature stage, and this is the immature stage of the lady beetle. And then we got a lot of different species of lady beetles out there. So, there may be 10 or 15 different species that we'll be able to see during the year. Fire ants are extremely important. Again, I mentioned how important they are in the no-till and the reduced-till systems. They're excellent predators going up the stalk, finding escaped bollworms. When the bollworms, if they get big enough and they drop to the ground and they try to pupate out, the fire ants often find them then and get them before they can get into the ground. Spiders, there's a whole complex of spiders. This is the green link spider, very common spider that we find out in the field. And we'll also find several different species. One is a crab spider. When you get out to the far west, this is a very important species to them out in the into the far west, Arizona and California. Here's another one that's important, and this is the graying lacewing egg, and it's laid up on a stalk to protect it from other insects feeding on it. And you'll see these often out in the field. Now, the brown lacewing egg is not laid on a stalk like the green lacewing egg. Of course, when you get to the immature stage of the lacewings, they're very good beneficial insects attacking insects. You'll see them a lot when we have problems with aphids. And here is the adult. Now we have a whole complex of damsel bugs, and they're very active predators. They stick their stylus into the worms or soft-bodied insects, suck the juices out. Excellent. Here's a predator insect that we don't see very much, but they're very active in helping us to control spider mites. And this is predatory mites. And they're very active, and it's hard for us to really quantify how well they do on spider mites, but they're an important beneficial insect. And here's the spine soldier bug. It's often mistaken for the brown stink bug. You'll notice that the spines on the brown stink bug are very pronounced. Hoverflies are here's the larva stage. You often see these small insects flying around the field. This is the adult fly of the hoverfly. And then, of course, we have ground beetles. Here's the larva, and here's a tiger ground beetle. I want to get, in the last few minutes, I want to talk about our parasites and pathogens. Probably the most important one to us is the cotton aphid fungus. It's probably, you'll see the aphid populations build up during the season, and all of a sudden this fungus will come in and their populations will crash. One thing I do want to mention is that a lot of these insects are so small that we're not able to see them. Here is a wasp that is attacking the aphid. It's very important. Here's one that we often see out in the field, and that is the Cotesian wasps. We'll see the single eggs. We used to see them a lot more when we had beet armyworms. Here's a species that's not as important, and that is what we is nicknamed the red-tailed wasp, and it's very specific to the tobacco budworm, which we don't see very much in cotton very much due to the BT cotton. So we don't see this beneficial as much as we used to before the introduction of BT cotton. And then we have some flies out here, taconic flies. This is if you look over here on this here, you'll see their eggs laid. Their eggs will hatch out into a maggot which bores into the worm and feeds internally. Of course, the worm quits eating, and he's or she is dead before they just don't know it. This is a field where I saw armyworms, and just about every armyworm had a taconic fly egg on it. And then there's also a lot of cotton funguses out there, and I want to wind up with that. I've got about a minute for any questions, but I want to stay on my time schedule also.
And I had not seen the red-tailed wasp, the Cardiocles, in many years. And we started growing some tobacco to collect tobacco budworms down in Headland, and we had to get there really quick to get the tobacco budworms before the Cardiocles red-tailed wasp got them. So they're still in the system. There's just no place for them to feed in cotton.
Yeah, that's the thing, Ron. If there's not a host out there in the field for them, then the beneficial insect. That's why late in the season, sometimes when we're spraying for stink bugs, the beneficials aren't as important because there's not as many pests out there that they can attack.